Hello everyone. Thank you for joining in. Since my last two videos, I've been getting a lot more questions now for different roles here at Amazon. If you have not seen my other two videos that I've launched, please click on the I information or you can find the link below and you can see those videos as well. I've been trying to answer a lot of these frequently asked questions that I keep getting about different roles. I have been trying to get more experts who are in this field for a while and to get them answered for you. So please, in today's session, I am going to talk and dive deep into the software development engineer role here at Amazon. And I'm hoping it helps you and a lot of your friends and your colleagues who want to become an SDE at Amazon. And today I have called Guru. Guru is a tenured Amazonian and he has been a software development engineer and he's now a manager here at Amazon. And it would be interesting to know his perspective and his tips on how you can become an SDE. So please do watch the entire video and comment if you have more questions or if you like the video, and please do like and subscribe to my channel because I want to do more. I want to make it easy for you to get on board with cloud, and definitely share it with a lot of your friends who can obviously benefit from these kind of videos. So let's get started. Thank you. Hey, thanks, Guru, for joining this and doing this for us because I've been, as we have been talking about this for a while, and there have been a lot of questions from a lot of developers and a lot of people who want to join Amazon or want to know about SDEs and Amazon. And definitely, I think you're one of the people who can answer a lot of these questions for us. And I'm definitely going to learn a lot more about Amazon itself. I just completed my 7 years, but I still feel like, I don't know a lot about Amazon. So it's going to be a learning experience for me. So thanks for doing this for us.
Yeah, glad to be here. I'm excited as well.
Awesome. So let's start something for viewers. Like let's talk about Guru. Like, can you start like about the introduction about yourself? Who is Guru and who are we talking to today?
Sure. So my name is Guruprasad. As you can see, I'm a software development manager at Amazon, and I've been in Amazon now for close to 10 and a half years plus. Throughout this time frame, I've been across two orgs, four different teams, and two different countries that I've worked with. That's primarily US for 8 years and 2 years in India here. Uh, Yeah, so primarily before that, I did my master's in computer science at Penn State University. And so primarily my professional career has been majoritarily on Amazon itself.
Lovely. So 10 years, and I think you said 2 years in India, right? So that was what,
Yes,
2017, 18?
2018. Yeah, November 2018. Yeah.
Okay, and what teams have you been working with within Amazon itself? What are these different teams that you've been working with?
Sure. Primarily, my work has been around like tier one services, basically supporting the shopping experiences that you have on the retail side. This is my focus from the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was working on building a big data processing engine and a platform, so that there's an explosion of this analytics workloads and financial thing that needs to be done. So we were building a platform for that, an engine for it. And then prior to that, I was also building this distributed system for managing financial transactions. So again, in the big data space, along with all of this, were kind of like you deal with a lot of services as a kind of a common way that Amazon's all technology works, because everything is around service-oriented architectures. So
Right, right. And I see you wearing a Prime Day t-shirt there. So do you want to talk about that? Like how is your involvement with Prime Day itself?
yeah. I mean, these are you get this once you have a successful peak, and these are always exciting times. This especially Prime Day and Q4 in India, it's Diwali. In US, it is the Thanksgiving sale. That is when our systems are stressed to a great extent, where we have workloads like three times, four times what we have. So that's always like a kind of a very intense atmosphere, but we prepare well for that. So that's and our goal is basically to make sure we have a highest availability of our services, and then make sure that the end shoppers experience are they have no disruption for it. So keep all our services up and function at the highest level.
So I am a big shopping person. Like I am, you have no idea how many packages come every day in my house because I shop crazy on Amazon, and I really have to thank you and your team for doing that. And definitely, some Prime days are something I look forward to because of lot of discounts. But really, a lot of thank you from a lot of us here who are shoppers at Amazon.
Sure, sure. You know what? You guys are help us make us better at our craft. So, in fact, our last Q4 was such a kind of a breeze that whatever typical involvement we used to have, we had like 50% of it because we bought in good processes and we did the drills and we did all the work ahead of time. So it's always a good
So
challenge
definitely.
for us.
So you've been doing a lot of hard work, and that hard work is paying off. And definitely we appreciate that because now and anything that happens right with Amazon, it just becomes a big news, right? And you
It is, yeah.
definitely, as org and as an employee, you definitely want to avoid that. And you as a manager and as a person who's building these things definitely has a lot of roles and lot of responsibility to do that, right? Appreciate all the work. And now that I've talked about roles and responsibilities, can we just touch base upon what does a typical day look like in your life? What are these different roles that you do? I mean, you are a SDM, but then definitely I understand by being in Amazon for so long, you have to wear different hats as well, right? So let's talk a little bit more about
Mhm.
your typical day.
Yeah, that's so. You're right when you say the SDM is a very you wear a very variety of hats depending on the situations. And I've also come from an SD background, so I was an SD3 before. So at times I actually have to deploy my SD3 hat over there. So that's actually fun. It just makes sure that I am still I can understand, and like that part of my life is still good. For the Typically, it's a lot about you have a bunch of our lot of meetings and discussions. You have scheduled processes like meeting a lot of people, like a lot of one-on-one stakeholder discussions. Within the team, you have things such as operational excellence meetings that we have weekly to make sure everything is fine. We have daily stand-ups, we have sprint plannings, so goal reviews with leadership. Then, apart from that, you have a lot of doc writing. That's typical of Amazon. As managers, we do end up writing docs and or contributing to docs. So those things generally take most of my time.
So that's like one pagers and six pagers. Do you
Yep.
know how many pages you've written till date? Like, do you have any ballpark?
I have not counted so much actually, but it's not as too much as I would think so, but it is we've contributed to a lot of these docs. Like we typically have like OP1 docs, OP2 docs, and then we have a PRFAQ, and then a lot of technical docs that we write. Those are all part of it. And it's all our data-driven culture where whenever you want to make an argument that you have to present it with the data, which I think is a great kind of a forcing function for anyone to kind of like make sure that you're in the right track.
Right, definitely. I mean, when even I joined and I was also looking for different roles, I was told this that, Amazon, in Amazon, we don't prefer PPTs a lot internally when we are talking a lot with each other. We don't prefer presentations. It's going to be about someone writing a doc or a narrative or a six-pager, and everyone just sits. The first 10 minutes of the meeting will be everyone just sitting and reading that document thoroughly, and then the
Mhm.
entire meeting about will be like going paragraph by paragraph or page by page and just diving deep. And definitely just so that viewers know that these documents are not like just like typing few words and you're done. It's going to be filled with a lot of data, and there's a lot of numbers and a lot of information that goes into it by creating narrative. So definitely a lot of work that managers have to do. Sometimes may go unappreciated, but definitely it is a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and it's also basically one of the main things that I find personally liking is it brings that clarity in your own thought process.
Yeah.
Once you
Yeah.
have something in your mind, you start writing it, and you have to narrate a story, right? You have to say what is this, like have that flow, and that's kind of a working art. I think there are a lot of great doc writers in Amazon. I've worked with a couple of them, and like it's and it helps in kind of like representing what we want to do, understand the problem well, and then actually build the right things.
Definitely. Um, so we are not doing a session on doc writing, but definitely that is an acquired capability or that people have here, and there are a lot of trainings that we have to do. I mean, normal people like me who are not that great at writing, but would have to do to be better at that. So great. And so we talked about your role, we talked about you as your daily job, right? I'm sure many of them are still interested to know about your backstory, because
Mhm.
a lot of questions that I get are from people who are already IT professionals maybe for a few years and may have interest in joining Amazon or knowing how what Amazon looks for, or these may also be a lot of students who are
Mhm.
doing their masters or doing their graduation and they want to be hired as STEs, right? So I want to go back to 10 years. I know it is going to
Mhm.
be difficult for you to talk about last 10 years, but let's try to have an understanding about what you were doing before uh, Amazon, and then we'll talk a bit more in detail. So uh, let's talk about your journey as an SDE. What were you doing before Amazon?
Yeah, I was actually in a university. I was doing my masters. I was actually thinking about doing my PhD. So I was in a dual mind at that point of time. So I was kind of in the university for a couple of 2.5 years, and I decided that I like probably to be the industry, like the abstractness. I was good enough with the research that was going on. So I switched to kind of like applied to companies, and I joined Amazon. My work prior to that had primarily been on like a lot of operating systems, on security, on file systems. So primarily, my only language I'd learned was C, and so for a good thing in Amazon is it doesn't matter what language you know or don't know, what how well you know and how well you can actually solve problems. So that's how for me when I took the interview, I took only in C. I didn't know Java, and I got through, and then I had to learn Java and other languages like Perl and Python and a whole bunch of things that I needed. So and that's how I started in Amazon. It was a very different world because in Amazon it was like service oriented, like a lot of it was a little higher level in when you say in computer science. I was dealing with pointers, memory allocation, low level computer science stuff. But in here, since it's Java, building applications, you're not building any the core foundations. The focus was different, and it took a while for me to get adjusted to it. Um, and I was more had a lot of dive deep skills that I was using in my previous thing. Here it became I had to reset my kind of expectation and work on making sure that I'm actually successful here.
And how was your experience? How was the initial years for you when you joined? Because a lot of us, like even I, when I talk to a lot of people who join Amazon, right, and
Mhm.
there's lot, like you mentioned, right, there's a way that the organization thinks, the cultural aspect to it. What was your experience when you joined?
Yeah, I think to be honest, like the first year or so was a little difficult. It was a lot of. I knew I could do it. I knew I was. There was like in terms of computer science, I had done a lot of problem solving and stuff. But just getting accustomed to this way of culture and being successful at Amazon was different. Here, the you're as a SDE, you're still responsible for end to end. Like you're not, you still have to work backwards from the customers, understand if a feature that you're building that actually makes sense. Then or even taking the operational excellence also, you generally, depending on how the team is, you might start going into on-call rotations, which can be a little stressful. Because you don't know a lot of systems, and that's true. When you enter, you probably know 20% of your what you know, and then when things start going wrong, then you need to start responding to things. But I think that's where it depends. Like you have your team, and your manager to kind of like get that necessary support. But for me, after those initial year and a half or two, it's been really amazing. In fact, for me, that's like almost felt like I've been very comfortable, and like work-wise or even the work-life balance-wise, it's been much better after that.
Yeah, so definitely agree with that, because when I talk to a lot of people who come join me, right? Like you have been, we must be mentoring a lot of folks within your team or outside of your team as well. And the first thing I tell them is just stay, like, just take it in. Like it's gonna be like drinking from the fire hose. Just take it in. Don't get too overwhelmed. You've crossed the interview, right? Like you have been hired, right? So definitely we saw something in you and you're gonna be able to be successful. Just have that confidence and keep rolling. Like uh, within 2 months, I think you must have learned so much within the organization that you may
Mhm.
your somewhere else, right? So the learning curve is like super, you could say hockey stick kind of a growth in learning itself, right? And I agree, it's individual. Some people get, if they cross the 6 month mark, they will be settled here, or if they cross the 1.5 year mark or 2 years mark, then they are like okay to carry on. But I agree,
Yeah, and I think
it
that those are the time you can talk to your mentors within your team or your manager. Try to
mentors,
get
but
used to what
yeah,
is that difference in that culture. It is different workspace, and there's a reason why Amazon has been so widely successful. We used to call it a peculiar way of thinking. So, but it's something, but it's very adaptable. And once you talk to people and understand, I think it will help you a lot.
definitely. I mean, people are very helpful in the organization, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
they are busy, but they all are helpful. Like, I've never found someone who will say, "Hey, sorry, I cannot help you with this." If they're busy, they'll just redirect you. Like, maybe this person is better at this. Can you reach out? But yeah, I've never found anyone who would say, "I won't help you for any
Yeah.
of the work." Right? Great. So let me ask you the question that everyone would want to know is, how can one become an SDE in Amazon, or what are the skills that you think would make someone a very good SDE? And these could be technical skills and soft skills and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I'll leave it to you how you want to arrange that, but what are the skills that typically we look for, and how can one become an SDE here?
So SDE is a technical role. So obviously we look at primarily focus on technical skills. When we say technical, we be looking at coding skills. Do you have the right experience? Do you have the right skill sets to write code? That's what, as a part of the interview, we evaluate. There's different aspects to it. One is like how reasonably quick can you write code? How can you translate a problem or a solution that you have in mind to the coding here? That's kind of a very tricky part where I see a lot of people, they can able to understand a problem and even articulate a solution, but translating it into effective code is another skill that's useful. Doing that, are you using the right data structures? Are you using the right algorithms? These are your computer science skill set that comes into play. Then we're looking at also, are you able to handle the corner cases or edge cases? So we don't want people to write pseudocode or just good enough code, right? We expect something close to working code is the expectation. So making sure you, in the computer science terminology, you declare variables, initialize it, make sure that when you're going through the code, you make sure you make those updates correctly, handle that edge cases. So those becomes important. After
Right.
that, you can also talk about like what is the complexity of the solution that you're using, right? Is it going to run fast? Is it going to run slow? So in terms of time complexity, we speak about, do you understand those aspects of it? Uh, so those are the coding skills that's important. And that's primarily when you're in a college or you're trying to get into as intern, that will be the focus, right? We are pick whatever language that you're comfortable with, but
Okay.
you need to be
Yeah.
good at
Okay.
it, right? Interviewers here do not generally say like, okay, we expect you to write in one language or other language. The choice is given to the interviewee. So you can write in Python, or you can write in C or Java, whatever you're comfortable with. The goal is, are you able to solve that problem that you've given in the solution that you have?
Ultimately, I mean, ultimately the language is something and that will help create it, right? But it's the logic that
Mhm.
you're looking for. It's the way they are thinking about that problem and working towards a solution for it, right?
Yeah, and then yeah, it's so there. That's the coding part of it. That's like you have a lot
Okay.
of computer science knowledge and skills that you get to use. And then the other one that we look at is problem solving. Can you think about
Okay.
problems using those fundamental blocks of computer science thing that you have? Can you solve problems, right? It could be algorithmic problems. It could be breaking down complexity, design problems. So different kinds of it that we kind of like quiz you on. And the other one is, as you for folks who are a little tenure, who've
Mm-hmm.
been in the industry, we also look at design skills, right?
Okay.
That's since if you've worked for it, we expect that you would have designed some things, and design may mean both on a high level design and a low level design. Low level design are basically your classes. Are you
Yeah.
how's your class organization? Is it clean? Does it have any red flags in it? And then high level things in terms of components and systems and structures. Say if you're using some data stores, how are you using it? Do you understand why you're picking one data store as opposed to another data store? What are the trade-offs involved? So that will become important.
Okay. Okay. And what about system design? Does that uh, is that something that you look for within the candidate, like when they're coming from outside, or does that happen on the job? Like, what's the idea around that?
So system design is it is very especially for tenured SDEs, we do expect some kind of system design. Um,
Okay.
s- many of the positions and job roles outside Amazon, this is covered. Like people have to handle scale to some extent, right?
Right.
So we expect you. Do you understand what does it mean by scale, right? Today you might be serving say 1,000 transactions per second. Tomorrow your service might become wildly popular. It might go to 10,000 or 1 lakh TPS, right? So how do you think in that when such a scale happens, what components stay as it is, what components needs to be redone? So so are you aware in fact if you're working backwards, what are your current requirements of scale? Do you know how to translate it to your current design instead of like completing everything and then finding a surprise that say some component doesn't scale? So this is a very important aspect. And so at times I've seen many people might not have worked with those scale. Like they would have
Yeah.
worked, their scale would be different, but that's fine too. So in that case, I would say to the candidates to kind of like focus on your system. There are complexity might be coming from your business requirements, that constantly changing business requirements. How do you build a system which can adapt to those things, right? So that the new changes are much more easier. So and that's important in terms of like all of this through all of the systems that you work, data and metrics are important. So you can say like how much, what are the numbers your system was using, how many customers was using, what was their access patterns, was there a growth in the access patterns that they saw. So that will be again a very good thing for anybody to understand about their systems, which will help in their interviews.
Definitely, definitely. And it's not like, here we at AWS keep saying like, it's not just going to help that you keep giving infrastructure or just add more EC2 instances and that's going to help you scale. Not just about the infrastructure, it's also about the code. If your application is able to scale, and here we are not talking about a small scale, right? And we just look at
Mhm.
Amazon in India, that would easily start with, like, millions. Like, anything you start in India is just starts with millions. There's lakhs and lakhs of people who want to
Yeah.
play with, test it out, right? So your beta is itself at a huge scale, and your prod is definitely going to be at a much bigger scale. So I understand why you want to talk about scale, and you want candidates to understand that here we're not talking about building an application that one or two or even something you go into a lot more bigger number.
Yep. Yes. And that should be part of your design thinking, like right from including that. And at times, cost is also important as a trade-off. Like
Yeah,
so, as you
yeah,
said, like you can. Why don't we just throw in a whole bunch of boxes? And that happens. Many people. That's a very standard reaction. But if you think about bring cost into it, does it? Are we prohibitively expensive? Then you start thinking about changing your designs as well.
definitely. And what about, you did mention it somewhere, but what about databases? Like, um, uh, how much knowledge do you think an SDE, when you're
Mhm.
interviewing, should have around databases? And we did talk about,
Mhm.
having understanding database design, but essentially, can you talk more on that?
Yeah, I think I think it's quite important. The reason I say this, almost any work that you do, you will end up with talking to a database or accessing a database or working with it. So you might not understand the entire details, internals of how a database engine works, but what is expected is what is its characteristics? Like what are its limits? How do you play with it? That's more of a system knowledge, right? So if say you have one box of database, right? How many connections can it take? Can you
Right,
horizontally replicate it, or can you not? Say for like SQL and NoSQL, right?
right,
Why do you choose one over the other, right? If you do you have transactionality as a need in your system design, or do you need horizontal scaling? What are the trade-offs? Like a lot of times I do see in interviews they will say like, okay, fine, I'm going to use say Amazon's AWS DynamoDB. I'll just scale it, right? Okay, now what are the challenges that you get? You start scaling. Is it infinite scaling? Okay, obviously nothing is infinite. There are all limits around it. So do you understand those limits, right? When then there are things such as like hotkeys, then you start looking at hot partitions. So those are things that if you start diving deep, and these are not internals of any of the services. If you look at some of the product manuals, user manuals, you will understand these things. Um, and that becomes that's why it's important to know to that level of abstraction, so that when you build your systems using it, you know when what are the limits of your system, like when what tolerances you have, and if you need to expand or rebuild, what to go ahead with.
right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Definitely. I mean, these are a lot of things that the people who have built the system should know, right? I mean, we're not expecting someone to be educated, but we want them to understand from the application perspective itself, like how would you interact with the data store, and whatever that data store would be, how would you interact with that? And considering the world of microservices and having every service use a purpose-built database strategy kind of a thing, uh, having this understanding definitely is something that is going to be long-term.
Mhm.
Cool. Okay. So we talked about, like, in case you wanted to add anything else, I would definitely want to know more about the soft skills as well. It's not just going to be about someone who is just come out and coding and they know all these things, and they're
Yeah.
going to be that.
Yeah, so the soft skills is actually the very unique part of Amazon, and the emphasis is there almost throughout, right from our interview process all the way through your growth and promotions and all that. So we call that as leadership principles, which many people might be familiar. These are generally publicly available. It talks about those core kind of an ideas, and you can think of easy ways to when you're to make decisions around and to evaluate how to go about anyone's roles and responsibilities. So two main leadership principle that's very essential almost to every role and every level. That's customer obsession and ownership, right? Do you understand customers? Do you actually care about your customers to work backwards, or are you just focused on building technology? So that applies to everyone, even from an SDE one. Like they see, do you think about what your solution you're building? And then the other one is ownership, where we think as owners. That means we think long term. So whatever we're building, we want it to be long term, with whatever necessary trade-off that's there. So those two principles are kind of crucial. That gets kind of evaluated as part of your leadership or your interview process. And then depending on where your levels are, like you're interviewing at SDE 1, 2, 3, some of the soft skills also change. I can
Okay.
give you a little example. Like
Okay.
SDE1, we look at, are you demonstrating, like can you learn new things, right? There's a principle called learn and be curious. Are you curious about things? Are you learning new things? Or you have an open mind? Because we know that when you're new, that you have a lot of things that you don't know, right? And Amazon is a vast ocean, and there's a lot of resources there, and you can basically make use of all of these things. So that becomes a usual skill. As you start going to the next level.
One would normally be freshers, or normally would be people who may not have a lot of ITE professional experience, right? So for them, we
Yes.
don't expect them to know a lot of these things that we talked about, but we want to see their capability of learning, right? Do they have that thirst for learning? Are they curious
Mhm.
about things? And definitely, so for the initial level, we definitely learn and be curious sounds something very important.
Yep, exactly. And how are you taking that? You're just not learning something you read on a blog and stop it, right? That's good. But
Exactly.
do you take that and you try to experiment it and you build something, and then can you see if you can, whatever you built, can you apply to what your work is or your projects is? So that's kind of where you can demonstrate a good principle on this. For the next kind of an SD2, you can we look at the things. Are you able to, like, go dive deep into things? Are you able to deliver ambiguous problems? Like, are you taking from end to end, independently taking a project and delivering it? And then also things such as are you able to, like, kind of bring value to the team, like not just saying the right things, but question things if things are not wrong, like in the spirit of improving things. So that's like it. And then if you start talking about senior engineers, then we expect people to start, like, hiring and developing people. Like, we want people who are there to help other SDEs to grow in their careers, right? And then keep a bar high. Are you, as a team, and are we keeping our tech standards high? So those kind of things become important.
Definitely. I mean, hire and develop the best is one of the unique principles that we have, right? I mean, uh, almost all of us hire people in our teams, right? There is no say of recruitment or HR. Like lot of organizations have that, right? We hire our own team members, and people who are going to work with that person are going to
Mhm.
interview, right? Definitely that is there. And once you're hired, there's proper roadmaps, and there's proper mentors or buddies assigned to people to help them grow in the organization. And it's not just initially, right? Like we have a mentorship program internally where people can be
Mhm.
mentored even after being in the org for many, many years, right? So hire and develop the best is one of the principles that we have to abide by.
Yeah, I think there's tons of things help, especially on mentorship, in terms of, like, just there are, even among mentorship, there's the variations where you only focus on certain functional aspects for it, or you can focus on just soft skills aspects
Aspects.
of it
Yeah.
within your team, outside your team as well. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it helps, right? I've mentored a couple of people who have been outside of the role. Like, I don't know what their daily work is. I may not be able to help them with that, right? But I can help
Mhm.
them with understanding the culture of the organization, or how they can find certain information in the org, or how they can reach out to certain people, because it is kind of a flat organization that we work with, right? I mean, there are different ways you can approach different people in the organization if you need help. It's not just going to be, hey, I need help, I need to look in my team, or just reach out to my manager, right? You can There is this whole world of Amazon, and there are so many so many people in Amazon itself. It's so huge. You can ask people and you can reach out, right? So
Yeah.
there are a lot of things you can definitely be mentored about. So we talked about SD1, we talked about 2 and 3, and we talked about the while the core functional skills would be almost similar, I guess, amongst all of them, but definitely from a leadership perspective, a leadership principles perspective. By the way, the link is I'll add in the description. But leadership principles perspective, the kind of responsibilities that these different levels have changes
Mhm.
as well. That's what I understand from you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, all of these are applicable. It's not just only one is applicable to one level, but it just becomes more relevant at
More.
the levels that you're in. So,
Definitely. Definitely. So so there are three levels, right? There is SD 1, 2, 3. That
and then we have
when
a principal engineer, and then we have
okay.
yeah, that's actually a good question. So it's not just as
Yeah.
a SD, you have that career path in Amazon. You can go all the way up to even like whatever VP designation. So you start with
Okay.
SD1, you can go to SD2, you can go to SD3, then you can become a principal engineer, and you become a senior
Okay.
principal engineer, and then you can become distinguished engineers. So
Woohoo.
and this is a very amazing thing that you don't have to choose management, or that at some point of time your growth will, if you have the fear that a technical path there's no growth. In Amazon it is there, and a lot of people have become now principals, senior principals, and like we have a few distinguished engineers in US, and they work on amazing problems. Like as you keep
Yep.
going up, your problem scale goes up, and it's super challenging. And yeah.
Yeah, like we have one distinguished engineer. I hope new generation knows that, but James Gosling is one of our distinguished engineers, and he is like Dr. Java, right? And he's
Yeah.
uh, definitely been doing a lot of work around development for so many years, right? And I don't think he has been, or he would want to be into a managerial role, right? It's not
Yeah.
just, I mean, typically I've seen that as a mindset here, where after a few years of doing certain development work, the obvious or the only option you have is, you have to become a manager. And a lot of people here think like, what are you still being an engineer, like why are you not a manager, right? And it's
Yeah.
something that needs to change, because a lot of people still want to be an IC, like they want to continue working as an IC. Like look at James Gosling, right? He's still an IC, he's still a
Mhm.
distinguished engineer, he's working on a bigger problems to work for. And I'm not saying being a manager is bad. I'm just saying that if it's something that you're not fit, like not everyone is a people person, right? If you are
Yeah.
a manager and you're not a people person and you're not able to manage a team, what's the point, right? If you
Yeah.
want to be an IC, then you should be an IC rather than being a manager and not being able to deliver and disappointing your team. uh, and I love that about Amazon, that you have this entire path and this way of driving your own career, where you can select what you want. Like you don't have to become a manager if you don't want to. You can still find other IC roles and move further in your career.
And we have a great demand for ICs at a higher level. It's very tough to hire for us. So
It is.
if you know any principal engineers, please you can reach out to us.
Definitely. And I if I'm wrong to ask, is that requirement just in India, or are we finding a shortage like elsewhere
I
as
mean,
well?
in general, it is something principal engineers are hard to find, like especially
Yeah,
because the way the influence that they bring
it's
in,
high.
yeah, and that's a role where you don't have you have to influence without authority, like so
Yeah,
you have to you don't have like any reporting things, but you have to use the right you have to have your right skills, and people should you should be able to influence based on all your knowledge and stuff. So it's a very interesting role and a very challenging role. Like there is a lot of opportunities within, as Amazon is growing so big, right? Each and every
yeah,
org is having those bigger problems to solve.
right.
So uh, so it's definitely a very
Challenging.
good career path. Yeah.
Definitely, it is challenging, but I guess rewarding as well. So let's let's say now that someone has taken your tips and worked on those and gone through the interview process, and they have been fortunate that, or we are fortunate that they joined Amazon. And what would a typical day for that person look like? What would a typical day look like in a life of an SDE?
So I think typically it's going to be a lot of coding, code reviews. You'll be writing design documents and attending design discussions, working with your team to kind of like seek feedback and drive your design points. Another thing that's a little different is like you own end to end. So you might end up in writing your communication strategy. So you own the after like you writing a product, you have to write what are the user guides, your internal run books. So bunch of these things will be part of your life. We expect you to kind of like start even talking to some of the customers if required, clarifying some of the business requirements. So people get confused that at some days is like, oh, I'm not coding enough, and I actually tell them like coding is going to be like maybe 20, 30, 40% of your time, but the rest of this that you prepare to write the good code is what actually is very important. So because we know you write code, that's why we hire you in. So we are not trying to test your coding and stuff. And generally we're trying to help develop your other aspects of the software development process.
Definitely. I mean, coding, it's not just going to be like you're sitting in front of a computer who's just writing code all the time, right? That is not going to be the 100% job that is going to come around. There is going to be a lot of other things because of the owner part as well. Like you mentioned, there's going to be requirements gathering, there's going to be talking to a lot of people and building a lot of things and communicating with other teams within Amazon itself, right? For example, like I was working as a support engineer when I started, right? So I used to talk to a lot of development engineers. This is at AWS, but I used to talk to a lot of engineers who are actually building these applications, right? And like you mentioned, like it's microservices, so a lot of AWS services are like a DevOps pipeline, and they're like single service that has been built, right, by few
Mhm.
in by few SDEs, and they would be on call and they will be helping me resolve customer issues if there's a bug or there's something that needs to be fixed. Like in initial years, right, not everything was automated for a customer to do. There were certain things that if something
Mhm.
broke, for example, cloud formation. I was working with cloud formation when it was launched, right? And I had to actually sit with them, and they had to uh, work with us as support engineers, or they would actually have to come on call sometimes to explain the customer as well, like what happened and why this happened. And sometimes they would do it if it's a big customer, not for every other customer, but there were a lot of other responsibilities as well, right? Like being on call, answering to tickets, raising the change managements, and pushing
Yeah.
those through and seeing that the problem has been fixed. So there was a lot of
Mhm.
other work that as Reese did as well.
And that's true. And it's also you'll understand there's a lot of complexity that's outside the coding world that
Yeah.
you'll start learning and handling things which are super essential for the success of your project.
Definitely, definitely. And before I go and ask you for any other tips you want to give, how much of AWS influence does it have to have for anyone to join Amazon, right? In general.
Got it. We don't expect anything, to be honest. Like if you've worked with it, then we would say we would like. So again, we're looking for engineers who worked with systems who are able to build things. You could have worked on Azure, or you could have worked on your internal stuff. So that does not become about that you've worked too much, like you worked exclusively on AWS technologies or not, right? So
Definitely.
that's yeah. How well you know your systems would be important.
And to be honest, that is same across, right? Like even at AWS, if I am hiring a solution architect or a salesperson,
Mhm.
it's not always necessary that like it's not in must haves, but it is like good to have knowledge of other clouds
Yeah.
or this in general. It's not a must-have thing that you have to have certifications, that you have to have so many years of experience in a particular technology. Because I think that comes from the learn and be curious as well, where once you come on board, you're going to learn, and you're going to pick up this, like dive deep into it, and own that entire thing, that hey, I don't know this, and I'm working in this company, and I'm going to learn about
Hmm.
it. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of learning on the job as well. But
Yeah.
we look for the qualities rather than the exact knowledge on that aspect,
Exactly. Yeah.
because it's always day one here, right? The learning never stops. We always keep learning, and there's always this day. We are still in the day one after 10 years.
And AWS keeps building so many services, even by the fact that you would have learned some by the time you give 6 months, you would have become outdated with over the new things that have come up. So,
Six months is still a long time, you said. But yes, definitely. I mean, the learning never stops. Like you mentioned, right? You've been 10 years, 7 years. I still, like we always say, it's always day one, but the learning never stops. There are a lot of amazing people here who know their stuff and who are experts, but there's still a lot of things that everyone is still learning, right? Day in, day out. So
mhm.
thanks for all of
Yeah.
that. So we talked a lot about the SE role. We talked about the manager role. We talked about a lot of things about about tech skills, about the soft skills, and what does a life look like for an SDE at Amazon, right? So thank you for doing all that. Is there anything else you think, because you've been doing a lot of interviews, right, as a manager?
Mhm.
I'm sure you
Mhm.
must have already crossed 1,000 interviews, uh, being a manager and hiring for huge teams. Any other tips or any other guidance you want to give for
Mhm.
all of these aspiring people who want to join Amazon?
Sure. This is one thing I would say that I think, especially in the interviewing panel, that we really love is what are the areas that, say, this candidate is actually raising the bar? Like, what is that like really super strength or superpower that you can call of this candidate that he brings? And that is very enticing. Like, say, if you, it could be anything. It could be like your super clean code that you write, very quick. You are very good in your data structures and stuff, or your design skills are great, or you're able to like piece through the problem in a very methodical way and then communicate it clearly. Or it could be even your soft skills, right? In terms of how you've done it before, like what kind of leadership principles you've actually like really exemplified from your work. So those are things I think you can also focus on that. Sometimes during preparation, we only tend to focus on like what are the things that I'm not good at, and you keep improving it. So focusing on your strengths, on the things that you actually bring to the table, is a very good thing, because that's the panel gets really excited. What is that this candidate can actually bring to the team? So that's a good tip, I would say.
Even with weaknesses, right? People just say, I'm weak at this. You okay, you know your weakness. We don't want to just know your weakness. We want to know, what are you doing about it? What is your plan? Or is it something that you feel like you can improve over the time, or is it something that you're already working towards? Don't just say, hey, I'm bad at writing documents. So, like, okay, so what? Like, what am I supposed to
Mhm.
do with that kind of information, right? But if you say, hey, I'm a bad at writing documentation, and I'm taking so and so training, or I'm trying to build this, or I'm trying to write a blog or something like that, that would at least get my interest. Okay, this person is interested in learning or improving over their weakness, right? And we all have weaknesses. We are not like born with
Yeah,
no weakness at all, right? And uh, so I think that mindset helps a lot.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of interviews as well. Not as many as you, but I've been training for a certain program, on the bar raising program. And definitely a question I ask is, uh, does this candidate raise the bar? And that is like, I know there is a lot of times we don't know what a bar is. A bar is a very qualitative thing, rather than saying, hey, if this person does these 10 things, this person raises the bar. It's more on a qualitative aspect on the candidate itself. And like, does the candidate is better than 50% of the team? I think that's what generally we talk about.
mhm, mhm,
But it's
mhm.
I agree with you. We have to, uh, candidates should also be more confident into their own skin, and be confident that, hey, I know these things, and be able to, without being too arrogant, be able to portray those good things about them, right? It may not be that they are expert at it, but it's just to showcase that they are willing to work towards it.
Yeah, like manage your whatever you think is growth areas or something, and then really double down on your strengths and superpowers. That kind of helps you kind of like showcase how what you bring to the table then.
Definitely, definitely. Anything else you want to add?
Um, there's a couple of things. Like I think one thing there's always this tension about how much depth of services you need to know, and like how many services you need to know, how deep you need to go. So there's a challenge given that how many services, how many new things that you AWS folks are building day in and day out. Even a problem for us, even within Amazon, to kind of keep up with all these technologies. Uh, uh,
Same here, same here. It's for all of us. So
yeah.
we hear you.
So So what I would suggest is like this is kind of useful. Have a mental model or a mental map of how things are coming in. Like you put in a placeholder. Like there's a ton of services that are coming in. All of them maybe you can put it as like compute services. Then there are other services that are data store services. There are certain things like messaging services. So use that as the kind of a high level thing, and then double down on the things that you worked on, like some core services if you want, right? And then that once you have that understanding, it'll help you even in interview when you ask about, say, you don't need some questions around, say, graph databases. You don't have to know complete details, but you would have worked on, say, DynamoDB or a key value store in depth, understanding those challenges or your database. You can kind of like,
Try that.
that gives you confidence that you can learn other things as well. So that's kind of a thing, just to have a kind of a mental model and then simplify it, right? You don't have to again go check your manuals again. So if you ask something high level, you should be able to talk about it. What are the trade-offs? What are the main system things that you can, when you can do? What are the general areas you'll use this data store as against that data store? That'll help in terms of like in the interview as well, and also to when you were asked about questions.
Right, right. So that key, that like knowing the breadth where these,
Mhm,
like having that mental model, okay, if someone is talking about something like graph databases, okay, where does
mhm,
graph fit in? What are the
mhm,
typical use cases graph may fit in? And how do you, if you are interested to go a little bit deeper
mhm,
into that, maybe go in there. But having that mental model and definitely having some kind of depth and not just knowing a lot of things and then coming and saying, yeah, I know a lot of things, but you
mhm,
don't have your own depth. So I think that depth is important as well.
mhm. Yes.
Definitely. And I think my last question, but it would be more around resumes, because as a
Mhm,
manager, I'm sure you have reviewed a lots of resumes.
mhm,
That
mhm.
resume that you have told the HR that, hey, these are the resume I'm filtering in, and these are the people we want to interview. So, what are these typical things that you have seen, or any tips you can share, which will help people build better resume?
Got it. So one, I would say keep it crisp and keep it to the point. When you're describing your work and projects, don't just describe what you're associated with. Many times I see like I was working in this team as working in this product space for so many things and did development and maintenance. I'm guilty of that. My previous resumes were like that. Uh, the better way is to focus on the impact, right? I built and developed this feature as part of this to help a customers like that. It takes time. Sometimes if you're in junior roles, you might find hard to justify, but you could still give it a try. And that, even though it's smaller one, interviewers would love it. That means there is
Right,
something concrete, there's something
right,
specific, and it makes some sense. So that's what one thing. Vocabulary is another one. Make sure you have the right vocabulary.
okay,
If I can say, even when I started applying, I was using incorrect vocabulary. I was using systems engineer in my resume as opposed to software engineer, and I couldn't get interview calls for a quite amount of time. Uh,
because system engineer is what, like operational kind of a role, right? It may not necessarily be a developer kind
Yeah,
of a role.
exactly. And I was applying to development roles, and I was expecting, because I written systems engineer because I was working in operating systems and file systems. So I took that as a,
Okay.
and somebody had to point me out. And the change was so quick that after I changed it, I started getting calls within 2 to 3 weeks. Before that, I would never get any calls from, say, Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, or any of these companies. So that's important. So have it reviewed. Just make sure that you don't make these big blunders. And then when applying to positions, um, try to see if you have somebody who you know working in, say, in companies like Amazon, even other company. Go through internal referrals. They're much better because if the person who is referring you knows you, he can talk about your strengths, what you bring to the table. That's always
Right.
helpful. And if you're applying, other if you don't have it, if you're applying on the website, uh, don't apply to every position that's out there. That's a big red flag. Recruiters hate seeing that. Pick the things that you feel are matches your interest and apply to a couple of them, right?
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. I've seen a lot of people applying for support. I've seen a lot of people apply for development and this and that. And it's like, where what do you want to do? Like, what are you
yeah.
trying to do? Are you just trying to get the foot in and then see how it goes? But yeah, make sense of what do you want to do and then double down. And definitely, I agree on the vocabulary because I'm not sure how we do here, but I think recruitment would also be sourcing these resumes from somewhere, right? So that there would be some
Yeah.
kind of keyword matching or
Yeah.
some kind of automation done there. And if you don't have those correct titles or those keywords, I don't think you're going to be even picked up by that
Mhm.
initial automation. Forget about someone
Exactly.
doing a resume and then calling you out. Okay. Cool. And anything else you want to add about interviewing or recruitment before we get to the end? I think.
I think, yeah, that's pretty much covers it. I think, yeah, as I said, like, look around, there's enough material on the web. Look for
Yeah.
some, tips around it. It'll take a while, like getting a good resume out, maybe not the first step. So it'll take some trial and then, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had any the previous episode with Mani. Even he said he's an experienced person. Okay, he's like 25 years experience now. But even when he was 15, 20 years of experience, it took him four. I think it was 4 times he tried to do interviews here, and then he was rejected. So he was like, it takes a while. It takes a while for you to be. Meeting the bar or raising the bar and be able to be hired, so don't lose hope, keep applying. And at times there are openings, at times the openings are filled in, so maybe you want to
Yeah.
retry again in a different team, or just don't lose hope because there's a lot of opportunities everywhere, right? Not just here in India in your
Yep.
city, it's global. I think I would like to add a couple of things is the first thing is definitely don't lose hope, so keep applying, keep doing the good job. Maybe change your resume, update your LinkedIn profiles, because sometimes these things are important because a lot of recruitments also reach out to our LinkedIn. I've seen that, so make sure you have updated a lot of things. Having a vocabulary definitely helps. Even I've done that, having huge paragraphs and stuff like that before. But being able to be concise is something helps. uh, if these tips are not enough, there is still a lot of material. Like, just do a quick search on YouTube or any blogs on hiring. How do you do
Mhm.
hiring? What are these experience people have had? Definitely at Amazon, I feel our job is to give the candidate the best experience they've ever had when interviewing at Amazon. But just to keep search and try to understand how to do these things. The fourth and important thing, recently I found a link on the Amazon site where it gives you a lot of tips on interviewing at Amazon. And I found this last week
Mm.
where they have mentioned what are the different things that we look for in the software roles. They mention what are the different processes that we have at Amazon, like from the phone screen to the assignment to the loops, like the entire thing, like the process. So we have
Mhm.
actually made that public, and that is available on the Amazon site. And I'll put the link in the description. It's very good to go through that. And I think just this week they've started the Inside Amazon LinkedIn page, and Instagram, I think. They've started doing this interviewing tips, 21 tips for interviewing at
Hmm.
Amazon. Yeah, it's quite interesting. They've just released three. I think they're doing it part by part, but it's something that you should sign up and look for if you're trying to interview at Amazon.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So I know we wanted to keep it short. We wanted to keep it 30 minutes, but it's 50 minutes. Nevertheless, I think it was a lot of information, and I'm hoping it helps a lot of engineers that are interested, or a lot of people who are interested to join Amazon. And definitely, I do want to thank you, Guru, for going so in so much detail and giving us the entire picture of uh, how Amazon works.
Oh, happy to. I'm, glad to share whatever experience that I had so far.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. And for the viewers, if you have more questions, if you still feel like some questions are not being answered, just put them in the comments, and I will try my best to get these questions answered from Guru, or I'll catch hold of other SDEs within the organization as well. But I'll be happy to do that. Thank you for watching this, and thank you. Bye bye. Thanks, Guru.